Our guest today on the bridge is Kevin Morby, who is going to be at the Uptown on May 29th with Liam Kazar. New album, Little Wide Open, releases May 15th through Dead Oceans. Thanks so much for coming. You've done this before, and you've come back even though you've already done this.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's funny doing, I guess this qualifies as press, but most press that I do, I don't just drive down the street and just load my stuff in, and it's like just hanging out with friends.
Well, since you're from Kansas City, let's just lead with this. And I apologize for this question up front. Not particularly hard hitting, but also is maybe a little, well, you can judge for yourself. But did it occur to you at any point during the making of this record that you were a part of one of two Kansas City celebrity couples where one of the persons involved has an album produced by Aaron Dessner?
It did occur to me. Yeah, it occurred to me. Kate, my girlfriend she's a big Swiftie, so she knows a lot more about Taylor than I do. Obviously knew that Taylor worked with Aaron, who I just made my album with. But I get all the Taylor updates from Katie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. I thought the perfect answer was, who's the other celebrity
couple?
Who's that? I was really pulling for that one, but I tried not to put words in your mouth. So, one of the things that really surprised me getting ready for this is so many times an artist is like, well, this is the artist that I want to make the record with, but Aaron Dessner actually reached out to you.
Yeah, which I was very lucky. He's amazing, very talented producer and musician. And for the longest time, I was pretty stumped on where I was going to make this record. I knew I wanted to work with someone new. I have this long list of great producers that I've worked with in the past, but I knew this collection of songs. I wanted to work with somebody new, and I really didn't know who or how or when. And I feel like in 2024 I was procrastinating. I just kept saying yes to every live offer that I was getting, just to sort of tune out the voice in my head that was saying that I needed to go make a record. And one of those things was opening for The National, Aaron's band in London. So I went and played that show, and then the next day I was listening to The National as we kind of drove out of London, and I was thinking about how good the recording sounded. And in that moment, I got a text from Aaron. So it was this sort of kismet nice thing that I was sort of kicking myself for overbooking myself that year, but it paid off.
So you actually made this record largely at Long Pond, which is his studio.
Yeah, it's his studio, which I had visited maybe in 2019, because actually Katie's album, St. Cloud, she did the last song there. So I had visited it then, and it's a really sort of just beautiful, kind of rather modest-sized studio. Everything is just open air in there. There's not a control room and live room. It's all just in one room, and it's very cozy, and it's kind of a perfect place to make a record.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but your process in the past has been to just sort of get everything organized, get 2 weeks together, and go in there and make a record.
Yeah.
And this time around, it was winter, and then it was spring, and then it was summer. So how different was this process?
It's the studio, it's in upstate New York, so it's sort of rural around there. And there's just these beautiful, almost 360 glass views out the window. And being able to be there in different seasons, sort of for 2 weeks at a time, across 3 different sessions, was really beautiful just to watch, kind of the snow slowly melt and deer start to poke their head out, and then, I don't know, turtles walking out of the pond that had been frozen when we first started working there. So it's a cool, vacation almost.
So one of the things that you mentioned about the record in other places is that, a lot of what Aaron did was tell you, no tricks. We're not going to get crazy.
Yeah, I think, I demoed out a lot of the songs before taking them to Aaron, and they were pretty bare, and I feel like it's one of those things where I feel like I wanted them to remain that way, but without saying it, and then I think he really picked up on that, and I think he really believed in these songs just sort of standing on their own rather than adding, overproducing them or over-arranging them. And so, yeah, he kind of restrained me from myself. I can get pretty maximalist in the studio sometimes, so I think he kind of held me back, and I think he kind of secretly knew that's what I wanted in the end. So really good producer move on his end. So much of the core of this record is the two of you, and you've even referred to it as building these songs up from the ground, and building worlds around them. So what do you mean by that? Well, it's really amazing working with Aaron, someone who's can just play. He's almost virtuoso at any instrument. So, I'll go into a recording booth and I'll play the guitar and I'll sing the song, and then after a few takes we have that. So it's like we have the foundation, and then yeah, it feels kind of like building a house on top of that. And Aaron and Bella Blasco, who's the engineer, she's amazing. She engineers a lot of his albums. The two of them are just like this. The studio works like almost like its own instrument. It's almost like this well-oiled machine that the two of them just can navigate sort of with their eyes closed almost. So I would sort of lay this foundation, and Aaron would just sort of build on top of that. And then, when we get it to a good place, we would eventually bring in a few other musicians, but a lot of it's just me and Aaron.
So the album isn't out yet, but we've gotten a couple of tracks in, and when we first heard Javelin, I mean, it just like knowing you as we do and knowing Katie as we do, it was just this warm, wonderful experience. Can you talk a little bit about the meaning behind Javelin for you?
A lot of this record was written like in 2022, 2023. My last album, like the last time we talked on This Is a Photograph, had come out, and I was like, re-emerging back into the touring world, which was kind of difficult. It felt like sort of stumbling into this new future, as I know we all did. But, with that, I would like go out and I go on tour, and tour wasn't as fun as it used to be. It was, we had to be in this bubble, and we're just still trying not to get sick. And I remember like some of the first tours where if we got sick in Europe, we'd be stuck there, stuff like that. So I would get back home, and it wouldn't be, I don't know, the reentry back into home was just pretty isolating because I feel like I'd have to treat it once again like quarantine before going back out. So I think just sort of the whiplash of going out into the world and then coming back to the Midwest and like once again not really leaving my house was just kind of insane. So this song's kind of about that. I wrote this song just sort of all by myself in my house in 2022.
The video for Javelin has you and Caleb here riding on four-wheelers. Oh, yeah. And the only thing that's more surprising to me than that is that I don't think that this is a new thing.
No, I don't. I feel like we always joke that if I don't have a day job, I mean, I feel like I work really hard. I'm not saying I don't work, but like when I'm home off of tour, for whatever reason, I've noticed me and my friends who go on tour, like Caleb himself as a comedian, we get really into motorized vehicles. So we have e-bikes and we have mopeds, and I don't know, maybe it's just we're just trying to stretch out our youth. But a lot of times when Caleb and I hang out, we're just riding various motorized vehicles around town. So watch out for us.
Yeah. So the video not only features you and Caleb, but also a cameo or two in there from Katie and Tara Raghuver from KC10.
Yeah.
Is this the Kevin Morby Rat Pack?
Kinda, yeah. Yeah. We're all in a text thread. We should name the text thread that. Though I don't know that they would like Kevin Morby's Rat Pack. We might have to go with Tara's Rat Pack, or maybe Katie's.
Yeah, those are both good moves.
But yeah, it's a good crew. It's a good crew.
I mentioned this to you before the mics were on, but this is just a spectacular record. Kansas City is so woven into this. You've talked a little bit about this being sort of an unintended trilogy with Sundowner and This Is a Photograph. You're spending a little bit more time in LA, but this is like your Kansas City or Midwest trilogy. Yeah,
that's kind of how I see it. And I didn't even fully realize that until I started to do the press for this record. Because Katie and I got a place in Los Angeles about a year and a half ago, like right before the fires. And starting to talk about this album, I sort of realized that, for better or worse, these three albums are, I was living here completely full-time. I don't mean to say for worse for that. For better or worse, I now live part-time in Los Angeles is what I meant. But living full-time in Kansas City, and I lived in LA before moving back to Kansas City, but these are like sort of my my three full-time records, so it feels like a trilogy.
I want everybody to understand that I mean this positively when I say it. You're leading off the album with a track called Badlands, and you've been quoted as saying that Kansas City is your Badlands.
Yeah, I always liken songwriting to sort of talk therapy, where you don't really exactly know what you're going to write until you sit down and you start playing guitar or whatever, and then stuff just starts coming out, and then all of a sudden you're like, why am I writing about this? And you're kind of always figuring it out. And so I was like, why am I writing about like the Bible Belt and Badlands? That's not specifically Kansas City, it's sort of these other regions. But I think the best way I can explain it is maybe I'm taking those and superimposing them onto my experience in the Midwest. So I like to say that the song's not about the Badlands and the Dakotas, but it's about my Badlands.
You've also talked already during the interview about, writing some of this on the road and the experience of COVID. Bible Belt certainly was one that was about anxiety of being back out on the road and missing people. And all of that.
Yeah, that was sort of the first song that I wrote that ended up on this record. I wasn't aware that it was going to sort of lead the way for, an album to come. But yeah, I wrote that, coming out of the pandemic and being back on a tour bus. That's the first tour that I was on in 2021. It just felt so jarring. I had this like great pause, again, as we all did in the pandemic, but I never saw that coming, as none of us did. But, I just always toured. It's just been this inherent thing that I started doing when I was like 17 years old. And so then having to take that break and then coming back out onto the road, I was just sort of surprised, and I felt like it was sort of this terrifying thing to do. There was this gas leak. Some of the gas fumes were getting into our tour bus, and you kind of lie in this coffin-shaped bunk every night, and you're smelling this gas. And I was like, "Well, this is terrifying. Why would anyone do this with their life?" But of course, you get into the rhythm, and playing the shows is so fun. But also on that tour, I got this tragic news that some fans who were coming to our show in Denver got in this bad accident, and one of them passed away. And so I don't know, it just sort of met me at this time in my life where I was thinking about sort of how terrifying automobiles can be and being out on the highway at these high speeds can be. And then getting that news and just already feeling sort of the way I was feeling, I wrote that song in the bus.
And I feel like, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but so many of the things that we're talking about, I have to say, this interview is really tough to get ready for because all of the stories sort of weave together. And there are so many through lines that touch so many different songs. Like, how do I organize these questions?
I like to make it tough on you.
Yeah, well, congratulations. The other one that has so many themes that run through the album, but really maybe crystallize them, it's your song, Field Guide to Butterflies. And I'd like to kind of head through your friend Rachel Kushner.
Mm-hmm.
You just, like in November, you hosted a thing at the Unity on the Plaza.
Right, with Rachel.
Where you were talking to her about her new book, and she has responded now with an essay about your new record that is really worth reading.
Yeah.
But I think she was taken with the analogy that you found in Butterflies and the experience that you had taking that drive down into Arkansas.
Yeah, once again, sort of back to like the music sometimes feeling like therapy. I also feel like music has this quality to sort of predict the future or something like that. And on my last record, I started singing a lot about butterflies, sort of through this lens of being obsessed with Jeff Buckley, and Jeff Buckley he loved butterflies. So they sort of just became this sort of goodwill symbol, as I know they are to a lot of people. They're this beautiful thing, and it's something evolving, it's something growing into itself. And so I always just took it as a good omen when there's butterflies around. And I was on this trip by myself, kind of down I-49 through Arkansas, and I kept killing all these butterflies. They were crossing the highway, and it was making me feel really bad. And I know you kill insects all the time on the road, but I was like, oh, I'm like murdering these butterflies on this drive, just to have this fun solo drive by myself or whatever. And so I think just the butterfly and like that story that I just told you, and a lot of friends that I've had, travel companions over the years. An artist, maybe it's like low-hanging fruit as a metaphor, but I think often artists are sort of these butterflies, these people that are always evolving and growing and very sensitive people. And so I was thinking about that, and then I had this very kismet moment where I pulled over, and I was in Fayetteville, and I went to Dixon Street Books, which is this great used bookstore in Fayetteville, in downtown Fayetteville. And the first thing I saw was this Field Guide for the North American Butterfly sort of, manual. And then I wrote that song.
It's absolutely beautiful, and it touches on so many of the things that sort of go throughout the entire album, and it's perfectly placed at the end of the album.
Thank you. That's a funny thing because, for the longest time, I was really proud of that demo. And so I'd always lead with that demo, and I'd show it to friends. Like, I think I'm working on this new album. Here's kind of like what I envisioned being like the first song. I always thought that it had this sort of like the record's eyes opening sort of quality on it. But then Aaron at some point was like, what if this was the last song? And I'm really glad that it is. Because I think if any song sort of encapsulates the whole record condenses it down into one song, it would be that song.
So you've got a lot of guests on this record, and you've talked about Amelia Meath and how of Sylvan Esso and how her vocals just kind of took over at one point. Justin Vernon of Bon Iver, Katie Gavin of Muna, Meg Duffy of Hand Habits. The song that you just did, Natural Disaster, features Lucinda Williams. And when that voice comes in, I put down the laptop, I went and I got my wife, pulled her back in and said, listen to this. It's just such a powerful guest vocal. It's the one guest that's really out front.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, I was talking about that song with somebody earlier today, and I think I was really trying to create a voice of God, like just this God narrator comes in, and Lucinda's God. So
yeah.
And
and you think you know what he's talking about, but when you hear the song, it really is. I mean, it's
really cool. That was the last thing that we did on the record. Our schedules were all over the place, so she did her part for that in Nashville with her engineer. And then it was like this record deadline. We had to turn the record in, and we didn't know if we would get it in time, but we were kind of holding out for it, and we were like in the studio on the last day, and then we got the text from her manager and then the email from them. And then so like the last thing that we did together in the studio was listen to that and it was such a cool like sort of cherry on top. And she's amazing, obviously. And I'm such a huge fan, so it's a huge, huge honor.
Let's speak about another icon and another huge honor. How about Mavis Staples?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So I think all of us were just sort of like, when we heard that she was covering your song, I personally just wanted to sit down for a minute and take that in. I'm sure that you felt the same way.
Yeah.
And Mavis won Best American Roots Performance for Beautiful Strangers.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Really, the whole situation is really surreal. And I would like to live a long life. I just turned 38. I would like to keep going. I'd like to be 138. But if I died tomorrow, having something like that, there's more that I want to do. But that is one of those things where it's like, okay, well, if something crazy happens to me, I'll have done that. So I can hang my hat on that, certainly. But, she's just such an icon and such an American icon. And just, I've always just known of her through this lens of just, sort of worshiping the music her and her family has made. But also, like my other heroes, like Bob Dylan saying when he was 15, he heard the Staples Singers come through the stereo, into his house, and it filled it up with this eerie sound, and it made him want to drop everything and become a musician. And like that's how I felt when I first heard Bob Dylan. And so that's kind of how I came to know the Staples Singers, was through that story of his. And just to know that she's just been around for so long, she's influenced so many people, and the fact that my song gets to be a small part in her story is just an unbelievable, surreal honor. And then, going to the Grammys and seeing that happen was really, it's really amazing. I really mean this when I say this. Winning a Grammy, or having written a song that won a Grammy through Mavis Staples, I think is cooler than had I won a Grammy myself. So I'll take it. I'll take it.
So you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but she decided to cover your song, and you all had never met at that point?
We never met, and so I got a call. It's funny, my friend Andy, who's sort of the president of Anti-Records, who I've known for a while, we know each other, but we're definitely not on a basis where we, just call one another out of the blue. And I got a phone call from him, and I was like, oh, that must just be a butt dial. So I just kind of looked at my phone like, that's weird. Why is Andy calling me? He must not mean to call me. And then they rang again, and I was like, what's going on? So I picked up the phone, and I was luckily sitting down. He's like, Kevin, I just wanted to tell you, this call was completely out of the blue. I didn't know that this was ever even a possibility, but he said, I'm with Mavis Staples right now, and I'm showing her songs that she could possibly sing on her next record, and she really wants to sing your song. So, really, really amazing moment.
The other thing that had to be just mind-blowing for you personally was Nathaniel Rateliff putting the two of you together.
Yeah, super cool. Nathaniel's one of my best friends, and that was such a neat thing where he does these holiday shows in Denver every year, and he invited Mavis and I to come be the special guest, and David Rawlings. Really cool group, and he was like, you and Mavis can sing Beautiful Strangers. And I thought, this just speaks to how sweet Nathaniel is, but I was like, I thought the three of us were going to sing it, because it's his show, So I was like, okay, well, how do you want to break it up? Who's going to take what verse? And he's like, no, just the band will just back you guys up. I just want to bring you and Mavis out and just sing the song together because you've never sang it together. And so, Nathaniel, love you, buddy.
You know, he did do some beautiful, beautiful background vocals.
Nathaniel.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. What a voice.
Yeah. And by the way, this performance is absolutely worth your time, and it's easily found on YouTube.
Yeah.
And you and Mavis, and I'm sure that it was a moment for you, but just like staring into each other's eyes, singing.
Yeah, that was really cool. You know, I've been a part of so many different sort of recreations of The Last Waltz, and those things are great, and I support them. But I've done them so many times, and I think one of the last times that I did one, I was like, you know what, I'm never gonna sing The Wait again with like a bunch of dudes, unless Mavis is a part of it. And I like said that, and then they were planning on playing The Wait that night with Nathaniel, but I wasn't supposed to be a part of it. And we'd rehearsed Beautiful Strangers, and then they started to play The Wait, and Mavis was looking around. She's like, where's Kevin? And I was just like sitting there, and then she was like, Kevin's got to sing a verse. And then I was like, and now I will. I will do it. I will this to happen. But yeah, looking into Mavis's eyes, you know, I think we all have that experience that night. And Nathaniel sang with her a bunch, but when you look into her eyes, it's just, she's such a beautiful, youthful, you know, and wise, just, you know, legend person. She's the best.
You know, this is going to go a little bit into the past, but it'll all tie together into something that sort of runs through this whole record. But that song, Beautiful Strangers, it's such an interesting thing. In many ways, it's one of your most, if not your most popular songs. And yet you wrote this song as sort of a one-off in response to the terrorist attack at the Paris nightclub Bataclan. Mm-hmm. And like 137 people died. And you got booked to play that club.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that was anxiety producing.
Sure. You know, whenever you go to sort of, I guess, hallowed ground like that, you can't, you know, not feel the ghosts. And just, you know, it feels haunted, for lack of a better word. But we wanted to go do that there because the song sort of name checks that you know, that tragedy. And so it felt important to go sort of, I don't know, not reclaim it. A lot of people had played music there since that happened, and I think it always feels sort of victorious, but it felt maybe extra victorious getting to play that song there. And there's been people who've come up to me in my shows in Paris for years, ever since that attack in 2015, who have said, you know, I was at Bataclan that night, and it means a lot to me that you put that into a song. But to be at the Bataclan, and people say that they were at the Bataclan that night 10 years earlier, it was an emotional night, for sure.
And then just to up the ante, you had a couple of people that you noticed in the crowd.
Yeah, some of the people, you know, the young woman who was in this car accident that I spoke about earlier, her and the mother of the young man who passed away, they were both right there, sort of front row center, which I wasn't expecting. And so I sort of had all this, some, I guess, anxiety, or I felt this pressure. I felt, I don't know, like I had this mission to go out and give these people a performance, the people of France who experienced this tragedy. And when I went out there and I saw them, there's actually something very comforting. It was like these two, I don't know, people from, you know, from America, from my world. And I sort of immediately realized what they were doing. They'd come to finally see me play, and that felt victorious in its own right. And so it was just all around, the night just felt very celebratory, sort of in the name of, you know, people who passed away.
At one point you described the crowd being so into it that they were providing rhythm to a song that had never had rhythm before.
That's fun. Yeah. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes that's dangerous. Sometimes, you know, people don't have the best rhythm.
You know, can't wait for this. After the album is released, you're going to be posting about each track on the album on your Substack, and you're also going to be including some song demos.
Yeah, that's something I like to do. I love demos. I was thinking about this the other day. I don't know if y'all know that Song Exploder, that podcast. It's just so good. And I feel like Vice a couple years ago was doing these documentaries just centered around one like hit song. And that's like my dream, is just to like watch songwriters talk about their evolution of a song. So I like to do it too. Maybe someone else enjoys it as much as I do. But I find the whole process just so fun, and it's cool to show people.
You know, the show coming up May 19th at the Uptown, you've got Liam Kazar opening, and he has a Kansas City connection as well.
Yeah, we actually, Liam and I met here during the pandemic. He was living in Kansas City for a while, and yeah, that's where we became really good friends. And now he's, in my band and one of my best friends.
And also opening the show.
And opening the show, it's gonna be good. I do have a story I want to tell about the Uptown just real quick.
Yeah.
Which is my first time ever going there. I was like 16, and the Pixies had reunited, so it was on their first tour and their first reunited tour with Kim Deal, who's obviously a legend, and I was such a huge fan. And me and like two of my friends from high school didn't get tickets, but I just had this feeling I could get us in. So I was like, the show had already started, and it's like my one friend's favorite band, and I was like, why didn't you get tickets? And he couldn't get tickets in time, and it was sold out. So I remember we like parked in that parking lot at Uptown, and then I purposely ran to the booth to get myself out of breath, to get winded. And when I got up to the booth, I was like, can I get 3 tickets? And they were like, oh, it's a sold out show, and the show's already started. And I was like, we just drove from Omaha. I just lied. I was like, oh, we just drove from Omaha. Is there anything you can do? And the guy gave me this look, and he's like, I can give you 2 tickets. And I was like, okay, great, I'll take them. So he gave me the 2 tickets, and I turned around, and it was my friend John and my friend Grant. And I turned around, and I was like, all right, one of you's coming in with me, you know what I mean? And sorry to the other person. But then at that moment, someone was walking in, and as they were walking in, they're like, you guys looking for an extra ticket? I've got an extra ticket. So my first memory of going into that room was just this, like, it felt like a movie, this, like, triumphant. We went in there, and they're playing Gigantic, Kim Deal's song, and it was really cool. So I love it. I've done a couple of the Thunder Gongs, and I love the Uptown. I'm glad to be there.
Well, the fact that you were so free to go to the box office and lie to people is why they call Kansas City the Badlands.
Yeah, there you go. I was just a liar. You can get things if you lie and steal. Get whatever you want.
As far as you can break a whole lot of rules if you just keep putting out music like this.
Yes.
The new record, so special. We often thank people for stopping from the tour, the rigors of the road to come in and do this. You had the little short commute, so let me just thank you for something else today. You just shared a whole lot of music that isn't out yet with us, and that just means the world to us. So thanks.
Thank you. This means the world to me. So thank you so much.
Kevin Morby, today on the Bridge. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now available on 90.9 The Bridge YouTube.